Welcome, and happy 4th of July, everybody. Hope you're having a safe one and a fun day today. Thanks for coming by, if you could, to take time out to spend a little time talking about the topic for today. Mark 16:16 is a well-known New Testament Bible verse. And Jesus stated, whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. The late prominent American evangelical pastor, his name is John MacArthur. He said, those who reject Christ will spend eternity in hell. American Reformed theologian and Christian apologist. He's a Presbyterian pastor. You may know him. R.C. Sproul said that outside of Christ, there is no salvation. And then we have Reformed Baptist theologian, author, and speaker John Piper, who taught that unbelief is not merely intellectual disagreement, but it's actually a rejection of God's glory. It's a sin issue. So he argued that those who die in unbelief will face eternal conscious punishment. And he even said, and I quote, hell is just and fitting punishment for sin and unbelief. So the question on the table, have you ever wanted to believe something and simply couldn't? Have you ever wished you could stop believing something and you couldn't? Have you ever become convinced against your wishes? Or have you ever remained unconvinced despite your wishes? So today I have Mr. Stephen Hoyt, who is a philosopher. I've had him on the show before. He's a great guy and has a lot of really good ideas. And actually, I've put in the YouTube description some of his thoughts in the Phil survey papers, and on Google Drive, he's got an entire paper on this topic. How are you doing today, Steve? Nice to see you, brother.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fun conversation. So it's not necessarily about what we can sort out, but it raises questions that I think are important to ask and see where we fall out. So anyway, yeah.
Definitely go for it. I'm gonna let you take it from here, kind of outline your own personal views, and we'll get right into it. And I'm sure other folks in the audience may want to participate, and so I do have the link in the live chat.
Yeah, one of those is a formal paper I'm working on. That'll be a while for it is done to satisfaction, but it's the core idea of what I'll be talking about here. And then the second one is just the manuscript. Want to organize my thoughts, so I just wrote them down, and I'll be referring to them. Might be reading directly from that. But those are both resources for anybody that wants to view them now or later and think about and all that good kind of stuff. So my question concerning different theories of how somebody can be saved. Several of those, at least, are common here in the West, are belief-centric. And from my understanding from different fields of science, it just raises the question for me, what does believing get you? What can beliefs do? What's the magic sauce of believing something that would make you morally culpable for either having or not having a belief? You either get heaven or hell for it. So I'm going to break things down in 4 short parts. And the first is just over philosophy, belief, and the question, what can believe, what do you get from belief? What can belief do for you? So everybody that's watching now, thanks for joining us. And want to start with something a little bit more broader than theology itself, but with philosophy and what the task of it is. And I think the philosophical task is maybe one of the most deeply human things that we can do. It isn't defending ideas simply because they're familiar. It isn't rejecting ideas because they're unpopular. It's asking over and again, does this make sense? Every idea that humanity had has been incomplete. Every generation inherits explanations that seem adequate to those who came before, only to discover that they can be refined, improved, and sometimes even replaced altogether. So that's true in science, it's true in history, in ethics, philosophy. I don't see any reason why theology should be the lone exception. And just if you are abreast of the history of theology itself, that's the path it takes. There are, for any given category of question we have about different areas of theology, whether it's Christology or soteriology, which is the term for what we're going to be talking about here. Whatever it is, there are tons of ideas that have been born way after the event of Christ, some around that time. They've all been evolutions of thought, and they're all, supposedly, I just assume, diligent Christians that are out to understand the world on its own terms. What's the best way to center Christ in your life? And they all come out with different stories. So theology isn't a lone exception in how philosophy is applied. So don't feel bad because we're going to try and explore one of those. This whole point of why we're talking today. So if our ideas of God are about God are true, then there's nothing to fear from careful examination. And so they're going to be incomplete, and then careful examination is one way that we can make them better. And that, to me, is the spirit of philosophy. It's not winning arguments. It's not defending traditions. Understand reality a little bit more clearly than we did yesterday. So that's the question for today. And it's a very narrow question that I have. So I'm not going to argue that God doesn't exist. I'm not going to argue that Christianity is false. Those are much larger conversations, and I'm really not interested in those. But what I am is I want to examine one particular idea that's become so familiar in much of Christianity that we rarely stop to ask whether it actually works. So before we can ask that whether or not it works, though, we need one definition. It's, again, soteriology, and it just means a theory of salvation. And it answers one question: how exactly are human beings saved? We've been asking that for 2,000 years. Christianity has never answered the question with only one voice. There have been always been different understandings of salvation. Some emphasize grace, some faith, some sacraments, election, participation in Christ. Some focus on transformation, and others combine several of those ideas together. The particular view that I'm interested in is much narrower. It's any understanding of salvation that makes belief in certain propositions necessary to the condition of salvation. That's the idea I want to take on today and examine. Not because belief doesn't matter. Beliefs matter. Truth matters. The question is whether belief is being asked to do something that belief just can't do. And that brings us to a simpler question: what is belief? It's one of those words that gets used so casually that it's easy to assume that we all mean the same thing by it. I'm not sure that we do. Philosophers use the phrase doxastic attitude, and don't mind the terminology. It just means our mental posture towards a proposition. We believe it, we don't believe it, we suspend judgment. Those are the three. We've got another thing called credence, and that's how much weight we're going to put on the doxastic attitudes that we have. So now here's the question: are those the kinds of things we can choose? So before you answer, think about your own experience. And like we're at the beginning of the show, you were asked a few questions. Have you ever wanted to believe something that you couldn't? Have you ever wished you could stop believing something that you could? And have you ever become convinced against your wishes? Have you ever remained unconvinced despite your wishes? I suspect every one of us has. One of my common experiences growing up in the Christian neck of the woods is there were so many people they just didn't believe, but they wanted to, and they were doing everything that they could. And my question is always about that. I mean, can you control your belief? And if not, what does all that diligence and desire do for you? And it just seems like it doesn't make sense that genuine effort should get you into hell just because you couldn't believe. We'll explore what beliefs might be, and it might help us all frame the question in a little bit more pointed way. So anyway, notice what all those experiences have in common, though. In every case, you find yourself having a particular doxastic attitude. You find yourself believing, you find yourself disbelieving, you find yourself withholding judgment. You find yourself somewhere in between about a proposition. Belief is a discovery. More generally, our doxastic attitudes are discoveries. We don't perform them. We discover ourselves having them. That doesn't make us passive. Our choices matter. We choose whether we are going to ask hard questions. We choose whether to avoid them. We choose whether to be honest, to keep looking. We choose whether to stop. Those choices matter. They shape us, but they aren't belief. Influence isn't control. The will influences belief. It doesn't control it. I can decide to keep searching. I can't decide to become convinced. I can decide to read a book, but I can't decide what I'll believe at the end of it when I finish it. I can decide to pray. I can't decide whether or not belief will follow. Belief is basic to intellect and will. It means it comes before all of that. It isn't an act of either intellect or the will. We find ourselves believing, we find ourselves disbelieving, and so on. Philosophers call this doxastic involuntarism. The name isn't important unless you want to just look it up later, but that's the gist of it. That's the idea. It's if what belief is, if that's what belief is, then can salvation depend on it? That is, if I cannot choose to believe something, then how would I be morally responsible for the beliefs that form in me that I discover that I have? Whether or not I want them, that's beyond my control. This is the general gist. So there's a certain amount of tension that comes into play because there are situations where, similar to the one I was just mentioning a minute ago, where you've got somebody that really wants to believe and they just can't, despite their best efforts. What happens to those? The general question that I think is going to be on somebody's mind is either God makes his grace and his salvation is sufficient for every non-resistant believer to believe, and they do, or something fails in between, and then what do you do with morality? So I'm going to outline that a little bit more from here, and I'll start with just kind of telling you where I am myself in my tensions, and not because I expect you to agree, but I think philosophy begins with honestly describing our own experiences before we start explaining them. So here's where I find myself. Existence is very weird for me. I would be surprised if it turned out there was nothing like a God. I'd also be surprised if the God behind the universe turned out to be a perfectly loving God towards all creation, given the quantity and quality of suffering we all actually see. And I'd be surprised if my intuitions about God, morality, meaning, and purpose weren't artifacts of being human. It's all me being situated in this situation that I'm in. And I wouldn't be surprised if humanity never settles the question of whether or not God exists or what his nature is like. And so that's where I find myself. And those statements don't fit together neatly. And I don't think they're supposed to. So they're just tensions, and you can't run from them. You have to address them. And I think one of the mistakes that we make is believing that honest reflection should always eliminate tension. To me, that's a mistake. It might not be seen as a mistake, but a goal for other people. But sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes the most honest thing we can say is, I don't know how these fit together, but I don't think any one of them should be simply ignored. And I think that's what this conversation is really about, not removing every tension, not proving or disproving God's existence, but thinking our way through the philosophical and theological tensions created by one particular understanding of salvation. If we were going to refine our ideas, we have to be willing to sit with those tensions instead of rushing past them. One place those tensions become especially difficult to ignore is in what's called the idea of divine hiddenness. And in plain English, divine hiddenness is just the question, why do sincere people fail to believe if God wants a relationship with them? I don't think that question proves there is no God, but what I think it exposes is a serious problem for one particular understanding of salvation. Why? Because if belief is something we discover ourselves having rather than something we choose, what should we make of sincere people who never discover themselves believing? Now let's think about a person, not a hypothetical constructed to make a point, just a person. Imagine someone who sincerely wants Christianity to be true. They don't hate God. They're not looking for an excuse to avoid him. They don't resent the idea of God. In fact, they hope it's all true. They pray, they read, they search, ask questions, keep asking. They're willing to be wrong, willing to change their mind. They genuinely want to believe. And belief never comes. Is that person possible? I think that's the question. Not whether you've met any, not whether you think they're common, just whether that person is possible. Because if the answer is yes, then we've learned something important about belief. We've learned that sincere desire doesn't generate belief. We've learned that effort doesn't generate belief. We've learned that openness doesn't generate belief. We've learned that honesty doesn't generate belief, all these things. And none of that should surprise us. It's exactly what we'd expect if belief is something we discover ourselves having rather than something we choose. Now, suppose someone says, no, that person doesn't exist. What would that mean? It would mean somewhere, somehow, they must have been resistant. But resistance, maybe the resistance is just something that a person couldn't see. Maybe the resistance nobody else could see, but resistance all the same. Notice what happened, though. The failure to believe wasn't explained. It was renamed. The explanation became, if belief doesn't come, then there must have been resistance. But that's exactly what's in question. We're trying to understand why belief didn't come. Simply calling the belief, the absence of belief, resistance doesn't answer the question. It assumes the answer. What explains the absence of belief? What is hidden resistance? Or was the hidden resistance inferred because belief never came? Those are two very different claims. If we identify resistance only after belief fails to arrive, then the absence of belief isn't being explained. It's becoming the reason we conclude that there must have been resistance. The order matters. So because if resistance is inferred from the absence of belief, then belief is no longer being explained by resistance. Resistance is being explained by the absence of belief. Philosophers call the person that we've been talking about a non-resistant non-believer. I don't think that's an exotic philosophical idea. In other areas of our lives, we find ourselves in that exact same position. We're open to something and belief just doesn't come. And that's, again, aside from whether or not we want to believe or try to believe. It just doesn't materialize. I think it's a description of a possibility that follows naturally from everyone that we've from everything that we've said so far. And if that's right, what becomes of a salvation that depends on belief? So that's where my paper picks up, and it's just the core argument. It's maybe just a little over a page. Again, work to be done on it, but it's got a solid core. Everything we've talked about so far leads to a very simple question. Can salvation depend on belief if belief is the kind of thing we've been talking about? I think the possibilities are surprisingly few. Either belief is under our voluntary control, or belief isn't under our voluntary control, and God gives every person whatever causal conditions are in fact sufficient belief, or belief isn't under our voluntary control, and God doesn't do that, and salvation can't be conditioned on belief. Those are the three options as I see them, and I don't really know that I could see any more. But that's the landscape, and everything else is just exploring those three possibilities. I don't think the first option survives honest reflection about what belief is. I don't think the second survives divine hiddenness or the possibility of sincere non-believers. If that's right, then what we're left asking is whether one particular understanding of salvation has been asking belief to do something it's just not able to do. So that's a question my paper tries to answer. Now, thoughtful Christians will have long recognized this problem, and there are good philosophers and theologians that try to answer it, and I want to take those answers seriously. But I also want to ask a simple question. Do they explain the phenomenon, or do they move it? Take one common response. There are no sincere, non-resistant believers. If someone fails to believe, then somewhere, somehow, they're resisting God. Maybe they know it, maybe they don't. Now ask yourself something. We've already seen why that's important. If resistance is inferred only because belief never came, then it isn't explaining the absence of belief. It simply moves the problem. The question remains, why didn't belief arise? So here's another response. God's grace is sufficient for everyone. Again, I want to take that seriously, but notice the questions we're still left asking. If God's grace is sufficient, why doesn't belief arise in everyone who sincerely wants it? If the answer is because they were resisting, then they simply return to the previous explanation. The problem hasn't been solved, it's been moved. So another response, God has reasons for remaining hidden. Okay, that's entirely possible. In fact, it may even be true. But notice that it answers a different question. If it tells us there may be reasons for hiddenness. It doesn't tell us why salvation should depend on an involuntary, doxastic attitude under conditions of hiddenness. That's still the question. So do you see the pattern with all that? Each response may preserve the possibility of doctrine, but preserving a doctrine isn't the same thing as explaining the phenomenon. So those are different philosophical tasks, and I think they should stay different. So my question isn't whether these responses are possible. My simple question is way more simple. Which one actually explains why sincere people sometimes never discover themselves believing? And if none of them does, then I think we're obligated to ask whether the problem lies somewhere deeper, not with belief, but with what we're asking belief to do. So this is where I'll be wrapping it up, and I'm actually going to start trying to address what can belief do. And I'll end by asking what I think is most important question of all. Suppose I grant everything a belief-based soteriology asks of me. Suppose I believe. Now what? What does believing the right proposition actually get me? It gets me belief. And that's not a joke. It's the question. Beliefs matter. Of course they do. They shape how we see the world. They shape what we expect. They shape how we understand ourselves and others. But belief isn't commitment. We all know that. We believe things we never act on. We believe we should exercise, be more patient. We should spend more time with the people that we love. Belief alone doesn't produce those things. So commitment does, though. So maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe the question isn't, do I believe the right proposition? Maybe it's, what kind of person am I becoming? But that's what commitment changes, or because that's what commitment changes. That brings me to one of the most familiar passages in Christianity, John 3:16. Before I read it, I'd like to ask y'all one thing, because there's going to be people that have a strong reaction to what I read. I'm going to read my version of it under this theory. So just feel your reaction, listen to your reaction, and then, you should feel unsettled. And if you don't, then I think we possibly missed something important. Before you direct that discomfort at me, though, ask yourself a different question. Why does it bother you? Either I argued that, or earlier I argued that one particular understanding of salvation asks belief to do something it's not able to do. If that's true, then I think it has consequences. And one of those consequences sounds like this. For God so loved the world that he provided whatever causal conditions are in fact sufficient for belief, that whosoever involuntarily comes to believe the relevant proposition should not perish but have everlasting life. What disappeared? I think most Christians already answer that immediately. Jesus. Or at least his role changed. The decisive condition of salvation is no longer Christ under that theory. It's the occurrence of an involuntary doxastic attitude. I'm not saying I removed Jesus from the passions. I'm saying I made the assumptions of one particular understanding of salvation explicit. And that's how it translates. If that feels unsettling, I think it should. Not because the rendering is offensive, but because of what it reveals. Now, let me try something different, not as a translation, not because I think it's the correct understanding of salvation, but just to make a point. For God so loved the world that he made reconciliation, transformation, and life possible, so that whoever embraces that way should not perish, but have life in all its fullness. And that's a reference to John talking about the Hodo, Zoe, and Aletheia of I am the truth, the way, and the life. That's how that fits in. And maybe that's better, maybe it's not, but that's not my point. My point is way more narrow and simple than that. That took less than a minute. If an off-the-cuff rendering can keep Christ at the center while avoiding many of the philosophical tensions we've been discussing, then I think we should at least ask why we've spent so much time defending a view that asks beliefs to do something belief is not able to do. I don't think philosophy exists merely to criticize old ideas. I think it exists to improve them. And I think this is one place where we can. And anyway, thank y'all for listening.
Awesome. Yeah, those are good questions. And, and it just reminds me that how nuanced Christianity can be in addressing a lot of those sort of concerns that you might raise. Divine hiddenness, sincerity of belief. What does belief really mean? Especially when you think of when Jesus said, not all who say, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven. So it doesn't mean, I guess what the message seems to strike me as is it's not just enough to say, I believe, that you have to sincerely believe. But that's the part of the problem. If you don't sincerely believe, whose fault is that? Especially if you know to yourself that you're actually trying to believe as you pointed out, many Christians sincerely work hard on trying to cultivate a honest, genuine belief. And then it brings in questions of libertarian free will. Like, do we have the will power to make our honest beliefs manifest within us? Is that really possible? And then ultimately it goes back to what you say. Well, if it can't do that, if whatever your answer is, then what is the power of belief? What does the belief do for you? What work is it really doing for us? I don't know. It seems like belief is not directly voluntary in my own idea. Like, I now believe the moon is made of cheese. I can say that, but do I really believe that? Do I now believe 2 + 2 = 5 just by saying it? I think beliefs arise because honestly convinced by what you take to be good reasons. And this is why I think philosophers, I think you might have pointed out, there's they distinguish between like voluntary actions and involuntary beliefs, like being convinced, and it just it brings up morality. Like, moral responsibility seems to require control, right? Like, a common principle in ethics is ought implies can, right? Like, that's kind of associated with Immanuel Kant. The principle says a person cannot be morally obligated to do something that they literally cannot do. Likewise, blaming ordinarily sort of presupposes some relevant degree of control on that person, right? So we don't blame people for their eye color or their height. So it seems to be sort of the same issue. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a great sketch that gives a wider frame on the entire subject, all that comes to bear on it. So I'm interested maybe in seeing how people what ideas we might have sparked, because that might get interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to put the link back into the live chat. Now, we did get a few questions out there while you were talking. I'll try to go up to the beginning. Here, hold on. Exit music. Is belief the main criterion in Christianity? Satan would have believed and still is disobedient. Why would humans be different? What do you think?
I don't know. So so my background is not just philosophy. I've studied theology for however long, but that is not where I would say those are my strong suits. And I'm not willing to, my interest level in theology and whether or not it's true, for me, I'm studying an artifact. I don't care whether it's true or not. It doesn't do any good to my human well-being. Other things do. It's where I find myself in relation to it. So if you're looking for a theory of something that can answer both those questions, probably not going to get it from me. You can make something, which is what Christianity is great at doing, is putting ideas together to rationalize a response, so that those things that are in tension can be held in tension without causing it to break. And that's the skill and the art of it. I don't think it should be any different. Again, my whole question is, okay, great. So let's assume your eternal, even your present state, your eternal salvation or damnation depends on whether or not you believe. Okay, well, what does that get you? Like, I want something, if I were wanting something out of Christianity, I'd want a personal change in myself, and beliefs can't do it. Maybe you can see the way, and I think it's Abelard that has the moral influence or moral exemplar theory of salvation, which hits home for me a little bit more, because exactly what I'm saying. I would want to be influenced by the life of Christ and then do that life. And that's how I would pick up my cross, and that's how Jesus is resurrected, because I've taken up his life in the world now. And it changes me and transforms me and makes me more connected to other people, existence, all that kind of stuff. So that would be one way to address that, but I don't think it should make a difference. Belief gives Satan extrication. He gets yeeted, so.
Yeah. And this question may have to do with the blame situation there. The room to point the finger. Why isn't belief discovery and free choice?
So are we wanting that to say that it's an either or a conjunction? They're both a choice and involuntary. Is that the question?
Yeah.
It can't be a conjunction because those things are inconsistent together. Involuntary means you've got no choice. Choice means it's involuntary. So why do we think it's one versus the other? And this is not just me. This is the dominant view of how beliefs work in philosophy, in psychology, in neuroscience. We have no control over it. The best we can do is with our intellect, kind of like what I outlined before. Put yourself in a situation that makes belief possible. Read, research, be open, ask hard questions. That's all you can do, but you can't guarantee all of that is going to lead you to believe or disbelieve or have any particular disposition. That's just the way it is. And I haven't heard any good arguments except for the idea that belief is not completely, we have indirect control in the way that I just said. We can put ourselves in a position to believe, but ultimately belief itself is involuntary.
Next question. Why is this talk only focused on Christianity? There are many gods and religions in this world, much older than Christianity or Judaism.
Well, I made this post. I was online, and there was a discussion on reasonable faith. That was a video between these two different, William Lane Craig and then somebody else in the audience. I just thought it was funny. They were battling over this idea of, does God save everybody because everybody's dead in their sins, or is there libertarian free will? And the paper was my response. I just started writing, and It just, none of that makes sense to me. So that's how this conversation came about, as I posted that on my wall, and Scott saw it and said, hey, would you like to talk? Why would we be talking about beliefs in this instance instead of other religions? Well, one good reason is Abrahamic, well, let's just say Judaism, they don't focus. That's not their identity. Traditions are. Beliefs are the way Christians have traditionally identified themselves, which is another question, about artifacts that I can't get over either. It's not necessarily that you have to believe the right things to get into heaven, but you certainly have to believe the right things to get in a certain Christian group or to be counted among them. And that's always been the battle there. But all these other religions have different ways to identify their communities, and belief typically isn't one of them. And this hyper focus on believing the right things is just born out of 17th century, Enlightenment thinking. So that's why we're having a conversation about this.
Right. And Paul's out there. He says, very interesting stuff. Steve, hope you'll be hanging around for folks to pop on in a bit for questions, contributions, etc. If you want to pop on in, I got the link in the live chat. So whenever you're ready for that. Let's see, we have any more.
Yeah, I can probably give you maybe 30, 45 more minutes. My medicine is kicking in. I'm so under the weather.
I do understand. Let's see if there's any more straight questions. Okay, Brooklyn Lou. Hey Lou. If belief actually does determine salvation, does this justify people trying to convince others to believe as they do? Convincing them of something will save them, so you kind of save them.
Yeah, maybe I can put it in terms that maybe a little bit more straightforward. If whatever conditions give you salvation, don't you have a responsibility to create or at least foster those conditions in somebody else, whether it's belief or whatever? That's an ethical question, I think. And yeah, I would think that if you believe hell is real and that's a consequence, and there are these certain things you've got to do or conditions you've got to meet, then yeah, tell people what the conditions are. I just don't think belief is the thing that does it. So,
yeah, I mean, you know me. I mean, I'm a non-dualist. I sort of understand, the way I understand things is that beliefs are just like things like identity and stuff like that. They're in flux. They're always changing. The person I was, the things I believed 10 years ago may have been reformed, changed, thrown out altogether. They don't really reflect the self, whatever that means. You know, who is the self that's being saved and from what? These are the sort of things that a non-dualist would bring to bear on that. But that's kind of irrelevant to this, because we're kind of directing that on to the general audience here that may just want to know, hey, look, I'm a Christian, I'm a dualist, you know, I believe in a soul, I'm my soul, and my soul has to be saved, and it's going to happen based on belief. Or maybe it's the fact that some of you guys out there may believe that you don't have control of your beliefs, but because God elected you from the beginning of the foundation, you know, maybe you're a vessel of wrath. How do you know the difference? How do you know whether your belief is saving you or not? Maybe God wants you to be one of those people that says, Lord, Lord, did I not say all the right things in your name? You know, like, so again, it still brings to bear the great question that Steve's asking, like, what does the work of belief actually doing for you? Because just believing stuff, you can be wrong. We believe stuff all the time that is either right or wrong.
Yeah, I think the two, if anybody's going to push on the idea that at least two other places you could do that, is to deny that there is even a possibility that there is a non-resistant non-believer. themselves not to believe what they're supposed to. That would be, but I don't know how in the world you would go about justifying that. Again, from personal experience, there's tons of people I know that they started out believing they had a rich spiritual life, and then things started to happen where it was an internal struggle, like something happened and they didn't find themselves believing anymore. They found themselves doubting, and that transition into total disbelief, and their whole world was thrown upside down. There's nothing more that they want to do than to believe like they used to and be a part of a community of believers that they were in, and they just can't do it. So I think that's a hard thing to assert and try and gain any traction on, is that there is no possibility of having a non-resistant non-believer. I think those are common everywhere. And so then the question is, well, do we have this theory of salvation, do we have that wrong? Or are we going to say that the way that God brings about salvation isn't sufficient for everyone, despite us saying, I want everybody to be saved? And I know which one we should give up on. We should rethink the theory of soteriology that's offering that.
Yeah, and I think, we should try to get, if you're really having this discussion with someone, try to have a common ground. Do you accept like a classical, logical sort of premise that we can all agree into? Like, if belief is involuntary, if honest unbelief is a lack of belief despite sincere openness, and then just punishment requires being culpable, and culpability may require relevant control, like we talked about, then it seems that condemning someone for honest unbelief appears logically incoherent. I don't see any way around that. Of course, there's all sorts of arguments, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't think that would be logically incoherent. What it would be is morally inconsistent. You're asking people to do something they can't do, and then you're punishing them for it when they can't do it. It's just morally inconsistent. I mean, it makes perfect logical sense. As parents, we do that shit all the time, and we don't need to. Yeah. It happens. But I don't think we want to envision God as human-like in that way. We want to see him. He's consistently, morality with God is consistent.
Right. Dave asked, can one work to change one's own belief?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the whole idea of what philosophy, when you engage in it, and the whole idea of religion, when you engage in it, it's so that you come in contact with different tensions and different experiences of the world, and then see how the pieces fall together. And what I mean by that is, for me, as a teenager, I was fascinated by whether or not God existed, and I wanted an answer for it. And back when I was 17, I thought I was naive enough to think that I could get it. So what did that do for me? Well, it set me off on a path to learn way more theology than I should have, set me on a path to go back to university as an old man and get a degree in philosophy, so I'd have the structure of good thinking, so that it would give me a broad scope of how to picture where the problems were with what I was thinking. It won't determine what I believe, but it will certainly affect, and that's the thing, it will affect what beliefs form. And we already, there's the bad cases of this being true, which would be cognitive dissonance. We know that it's just a phenomenon in human beings. What we believe, what we discover we're believing, is different from what we intellectually think, and there's that conflict, and that wrecks the brain. We can't stay in that state for long, so we transition out of it generally, or we have problems.
What are your thoughts on when it comes to the reason are we driven more by pure reason and rationality, or ultimately it's sort of an illusion? Ultimately, beliefs and things of that nature are sort of rooted in emotion, in feeling, really. Maybe we just want to feel like we're being logical and we're being this and that. Or
Scott, for most of that, you were breaking up. So maybe you could ask that again.
I'll repeat it. Yeah. So do you think that beliefs, conclusions, unbelief, is that really rooted in pure reason and rationality like we sort of feel we are? Or is it rooted in our feelings, maybe even unconscious drivers that sort of direct us into those beliefs?
It seems to be that it's not intellectual, it's not rational. So in a sense, if you wanted to be technically perfect about beliefs and disbeliefs and not having belief either way, whether something's true or not, those technically can all be called irrational. It's not a part of the cognitive process. What is our evaluation and trying to put credence on the beliefs we find ourselves having. And if we consider those and it doesn't make intellectual sense, well, that's another case where we've set ourselves up where our beliefs can change. Doesn't determine that they will, but it gives us an opportunity to go, I know I feel that way, but I don't think I should feel that way. And then I don't know how all the gearing works, but the two affect each other. It's just belief. Doxastic attitudes are before intellect and reason and all that.
Yeah, because I do feel like human beings are really good at rationalizing, but not necessarily coming to conclusions based purely on reason and rationality. I see this in myself, and that's why I'm always really, when it comes to things like belief, and kind of what attracted me to the, like the Buddhist principle of non-attachment. It's those things that I feel that I have this feeling of passion or emotion. Those are the things that I need to be careful about. Like, I'm a big UFO lover. I love UFOs. I've always have. And I already know I get that passion from since I was a little kid, watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. and all these things when I was a kid coming up. And all of that stuff sort of makes me want to believe. You know how they say, I want to believe. Well, I want to believe. I can honestly admit I want to believe in things like God. I want to believe in aliens and UFOs and all of these sort of things. But I really stop myself because I understand that I can't trust just my wants, because oftentimes what I think I want to be true has oftentimes turned out to not be true. Like a lot of things I thought that were so true, come to find out that I was biased, and I've sort of recognized that in myself. And so just as a practice, I sort of just like to disengage and put things in their place,
Yeah. There's interesting things that you said that we could take up because you're right on some things, you're right on another. So that's what makes it interesting, because it gives you something to talk about. Are there any more questions or anybody that wants to pop on and chat? Or
yeah, I don't know. I'm looking. There's a lot of statements,
aren't there?
But not really direct questions. Here's a good one that may prompt into some other things. I think many people who are believers even doubt if this brings about salvation. Many people struggle with this when they're at the end of life. Many believers, too, get scared of death and then believe. And so, again, I guess that kind of goes into, your emotion, fear.
Yeah. Well, desire is another, attitude, and the best thing we can do, okay, so if you consider doxastic attitudes, just like anything else, if you get angry, you can't just turn it off. I mean, you've got to go through your steps to take a breath, box breathing, all that kind of stuff. Anxiety, same thing. So it's, beliefs are pretty much the same way. It's an attitude, and you just recognize when you have it or don't, and then you manage it from there. So
Try to call back in, Dark Light. I saw you pop in. I had you on stage for a minute. Nell asks, how do you go about building your own epistemology?
reading and thinking about, we have to, you don't have to. It's a good idea to get involved in the current dialectic. Sorry, read a epistemology book like Feldman or something like that. Audi, very common ones. But they'll open up. Here are the problems that we have in philosophy. Williams is another good book because that's what he focuses on. And then you'll get a background, and here are all the ways that we've tried to determine what knowledge is, what we think truth is, and then how we can go about responsibly having the beliefs that we do and making the statements that we do, and all those kinds of things. So at first it's just learning the field and the conversation that's going on. If you want to go from there and develop your own, that's just a process of time, because all of these different ideas fail. And that's the same thing with theology too. We're not ever going to have a complete picture. So it's an ongoing dialectic in whatever field of study that you want to take on. And the more you engage it, the more you're going to be in a position to say, well, out of all I know, this seems to handle the tensions better for me, better than any other way that I've read. And maybe if I think hard enough about it, I might come up with my very own. But usually we're just adopting and adapting. If you have a novel idea.
Hey, Dark Light. Hey, Dark Light. What's going on, brother? Thanks for popping on the stage. Any questions or comments? I know you love the Christians so much.
This is my first time seeing Steve right here, and I've been listening this whole time in between working on my book and stuff. But right before I came on, you were talking about making your own theology, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I consider myself a theist. I'm a non-Abrahamic true monotheist, and I consider followers of Abraham a blood cult of sin worshippers. And so I'm creating my own theology. It's called Darklightism, and I'm actually presenting it in a dual format, one as a theology for theists and one as a theory for atheists and empiricists. And it's all based on the same core concepts, which is essentially it's all based off of unity. That's a big difference between my frameworks and other similar frameworks out there, because other similar frameworks, their most fundamental trait is consciousness. And I don't think that's the most fundamental trait. If you look into consciousness even farther, you will see that there is an underlying thread of unity, which even allows the consciousness to begin with. So, and I have the Dark Light Decalogue, and I have its accommodating unified duality state of the dimensions. And there's also, I created my own Dark Light Trinity. Now, the Trinity isn't a anthropomorphism. It's more of mechanical functions. So it's position 0, position 1, position 2. 0 is the tuning veil of pervasive pressure, which regulates all. It's the master regulator of the other two forces. The other two forces is the abyss actuator, which is also called the void gate, which is the state of infinite potential. It's high potential, low actualization. Then there's the all spark, I call it, which is so position 2 is dark, position 3 is light. The all spark is high actualization, low potential. So I created my own Trinity, and it's much more logically coherent. I go into it really deep in my book. I just got done writing about it all. So the Dark Light Decalogue is 2 pentads. Each is a fractal reflection of the other. So the first is unity, consciousness, dark, light, and paradox. And then that fractalizes up to the next level 2, which is freedom, sovereignty, infinity, remembrance, and saturation. Each of the second pentads directly aligns with the first 5 of the pentads. And so I just got tired of followers of Abraham telling me that I can't understand God logic, that I can't create something better than what God created. I'm like, motherfuckers, hold my delirium, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm creating something much more logically consistent, something much more useful, and something that can offset the harmful ideologies of Abrahamic religions.
Well, Utlam says, so Steve does not have a denomination. And he also added, let me pull it up. Let me pull this back. Hold on. He also added that you have to be praying to the correct God if you want an afterlife.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the question that's on the table too.
Not for me.
Well, I mean,
the thing about theology is that the only questions that matter are the ones that you put stake. There's something at stake in that question. There's nothing at stake for me in that question.
Yeah.
And there's no logical way that you can make that important to me. Even if it made perfect logical sense, that just does not register with me. Just like we're talking about beliefs. That is uninteresting. That's an empty statement that I can ever prove. But this is the thing about it. In dark light, this is what I was thinking while you're giving all these in the sea of ideas that we come up with. The first thing I'm going to ask is, what do these ideas put at stake? How do these ideas change my life? And that kind of question does me no good. And maybe that's all that my answer is. Yeah, maybe I have to pray to the right God.
I can answer that in relation to my proposed theology.
What's that?
So I can answer that question in relation to my proposed theology, which is, so a big difference between my presented theology and others is most other theologies present the divine as something that is separate from you. Okay. I am presenting a logical proposition of the divine that is intrinsically incorporated into you, taking every single person from just a creature, a creation, to a co-creator within the Godhood. We are all a fractal extension of God. And this has helped me greatly, actually, since I started developing this conceptual framework, because it has allowed me to take responsibility for the world that I create for myself. Whereas with a lot of the other theologies out there, it can be, because it tells you that ultimately you are not a creator, that so it's easy to not take responsibility for your own world when you are constantly being told that you are inconsequential and you are not your own creator. So my theology is actually empowering to the individual instead of forcing submission upon the individual.
Yeah, very cool. Scott, I'm about to die over here.
Yeah, so I see you. I was about to say, I don't want to cut everybody off, but I see you struggling, not feeling good.
I really appreciate you having me on today.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man.
Interesting setup. So maybe leave a link with Scott.
If you want to shoot me an email, I can send you a copy to my rough draft, because I'm still working on it, and I could definitely use some sophisticated eyes on it to give me critical feedback. And I don't mind criticism. Criticize the fuck out of it. Like, actually, as I go through each chapter, at the very end of each chapter is a criticism and counter argument section to end the chapter off.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Look forward to that. All right. Well, I appreciate it again, Scott, and everyone else for bearing through it.
Thank you so much, Steve, for coming by and sharing, the topic with us. And I appreciate that a whole lot. And we'll do it again, as we do.
Cool.
Good to meet you.
You too.
All right, man. Take care. Hey, Dave, how you doing, brother?
Good morning or good afternoon, whichever the case may be. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
I have found your arguments kind of compelling, and I'm looking at them and I'm trying to understand them. And I think you've got a point that belief is, in fact, an automatic process at some level, but you can, in fact, push. I have personally pushed myself hard enough to change my beliefs. It takes time, it takes effort, but I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have done it many times, and I'm nowhere near where I was raised in my belief system. So it is a modifiable thing. In terms of believing in a specific religious philosophy, either East, West, or what have you, I tend to side more toward the Eastern side than to the Western side.
Are you able to modify the things that convince you? Like, in other words, you said that you're more drawn to the Eastern religious sort of ideas rather than the Western Abrahamic stuff. Why don't you just choose to go with the Western stuff? Just choose that way.
Well, when I observe the Western stuff, I see that the Western stuff usually repels other stuff. Jews have a problem with Christians and Islam. Islam has a problem with Christians and Jews, and Christians have a problem with Islam and Jews. And I don't like having problems. I prefer a religious philosophy that tends to add to other philosophies, and I find good answers in Neo-Confucianism.
Yeah. Well, you know, that the non-dual stuff. See, the thing is that the pride, I think, of the Abrahamic religions is the dualistic sort of aspect. You know, they see, you know, like like, for example, the Israelites were set aside as God's special people, God's special property. And so that makes them special as opposed to, say, the Mesopotamians and the Canaanites and, you know, the Hittites and all the other cultures around them. And so,
even.
yeah. And so that's where you get a lot of this, you know, sort of, I don't want to be strong. I don't want to, well, maybe I don't give a fuck. The hate.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. Historically, I agree with what you're saying, but that makes it bad. That's exactly what makes it bad.
Yeah. I feel the same way. But I'm wondering, can we change from seeing it as bad to seeing it as good?
In times of limited resources, yes. I mean, that's why the Jews originally did it. Circumcision is the result of needing to control the well. So, yeah, I mean, if we ever get to a point of like World War III and society is broken down, I'm going to be very self-centered.
Yeah. Hey, Brooklyn Luke, how you doing, man?
Hey, how you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Morning.
What do you think about Steve's ideas there?
I got I mean, I agree with Steve actually, but there is one element that I find interesting, and it kind of goes along with what Dave was just saying a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that is you know, first off, belief, I think, should never be a reason or a means to salvation. I think that's a crazy idea. You know, that what you believe should get you into heaven is just diabolical to me.
Yeah.
Because people believe things for all different reasons and then no reasons at all. You know, they just have these beliefs. But the thing is with belief that I've thought about it a lot. When you say you can't, you can't determine what you believe, or what you believe is not determined by other people, and that doesn't seem to be the case actually, because what we believe is shaped, and you know, if you look at the way that people convince other people, all right, that this is something that actually happens. You know, it's like you might believe one thing and you're under the conditioning of a group of people over time, and your belief changes. So there is a way to mold your own beliefs, you know, and I think that's what Dave was getting to.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that. I mean, of course, you know, the question is our beliefs based on pure, reasonable, you know, total, purely logical, you know, reasons, or is it sort of mainly influenced by how we feel about things? It's kind of like it kind of goes into subjective versus objective morality. You know, is what we call immoral just based on how we feel about, like, boo murder, boo stealing? Is that really what we're saying morality is? Or is it based on, well, we've logically concluded based on all the data that objectively as a fact that murder is wrong, that stealing is wrong, and that beliefs in God or beliefs in Jesus as the only way to salvation is the right thing?
I think it's more feelings based than rational based.
Yeah, I kind of lean that way too. I think we're good at rationalizing, and this pertains to me. This is why I'm always slow to and I'm very conservative when it comes to the things that I try to believe in. And I'm always tentative. Like I always say, I could be wrong, and I probably am. But if I was to express my honest opinion, I'll give it to you. But I'll go ahead and say that, yeah, it seems logical. My beliefs, hopefully they're logical, that there is a good path to connecting these dots. But at the end of the day, I realize that I'm just a limited mind. You know, I don't know. I don't have all the information, so I could be wrong, you know?
Well, when Steve was saying, one of the points that was being talked about by Steve is, can we change what we believe? Or, you know, and I think we can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like necessarily done in a moment. You know, it may not be one simple little moment that happens. But I think we can convince ourselves and change what we believe on purpose. I think that's possible.
So you definitely would have a problem with Matt Dillahunty. We had that discussion, and he had told me that you don't choose your beliefs. You know, your
right.
beliefs, you know, you don't, because, you know, people say you need to believe in Jesus. And so his reaction is usually, well, dude, you don't get to choose your beliefs. If I'm not convinced of something, then I'm not convinced. And if I'm not truly, honestly convinced, then where is the justification for God condemning me for something I'm truly not convinced into? Like, beliefs are things that should be honestly the thing. But I guess what you're saying is that actually you can sort of believe whatever you want. Just choose to believe it, and you can do it. It may take time.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It may take time, and it may not be an instant. But I do think, I mean, and it's a different philosophical look at that issue. You know, it's like some people would say, no, you can't. You know, you're going to believe what you believe, and it can't be really changed. I think it could, though, because that's what I see. You know, people are brainwashed, they're controlled. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they actually do believe things based upon what maybe they want to believe. All right. There's an element there that I think is a little contradictory to what Steve was saying, maybe.
And Dave, what do you think compulsion and influence have to do with any of this? Do you think that has anything to do with our beliefs? Like marketing, for example? And I mean, isn't this like the whole purpose behind advertisers and people, experts that are tweaking the algorithms and stuff? What do you think, Dave?
I had something to add real quick. There's some nuance to what Lou was saying. Beliefs can absolutely change. Beliefs change every single day. Lou himself is a living example. He used to be an evangelical, but you don't want to take that statement, beliefs can change, and apply it wholesale to every single belief. I think you have to be presented with sufficient reason in order to change a belief, and also it has to be reason that you put merit in. Because it can be reason, but it can be reason that you don't give a fuck about, so you are therefore not motivated to change a belief. Like, take, for example, I believe every step that I take, the ground is going to catch me when I walk on the ground. You know, I am not presented with sufficient reason that that's going to change. So you can absolutely change your beliefs, but that is on a scale of relativity as to the beliefs that you change, depending on the reason associated with the change in belief. It was just the nuance I wanted to interject on that point.
I would have to agree with that. one thing I was noticing is in marketing, you can see a lot of beliefs being changed. The volume of the marketing, the amount of penetration into society, and the continual repeating of a position has a tendency to change people's beliefs. They are hammered with consumerism right now, and they have always been, and they have been for many years. The cohesion of our society has been broken down, and beliefs and separation between people has been supported since Reagan, since 1980. Before that, our society was much more cohesive, and you can see that marketing attempts can be made to change people's beliefs, especially when the belief is supposed to override what one does, what one's actions are. So I find that this entire concept of belief being important as to be almost backwards from what I believe to be the right thing to be, which would be actions rather than belief. But that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I see tremendous amounts of marketing used to
Yes.
actually sway people's opinions and beliefs.
But Dave, can we do that to ourselves? I think we can.
I agree. We can. I have.
Yeah,
I do all the time.
That's the thing. And there's the idea that you can't do that, I think, which is what Matt Dillahunty was saying, maybe, and I think you can change what you believe.
Certainly you can. You can change what you believe, and others can change what you believe, and you can choose to stay in a belief if you wish. A belief is subjective. The objective is what can't be changed. Objective history cannot be changed. Objective morality can't really be changed once it's happened. But belief about it can be all the time. I can believe, for example, that I didn't insult somebody yesterday when I actually did. I can convince myself of that. I can say,
Right.
what? I mean, yeah.
Right. This is what I'm talking about. Like, let's say I believe something, and I go on a campaign within myself to no longer believe that, and I choose I'm going to make myself believe something else. Can I do that? That's the big question I think Steve was talking about. And I think you can do that.
I agree we can. Absolutely we can. And we do. We do often. Every time we try to forgive ourselves of something we know we did wrong, if we don't admit the truth, I find people giggling at making little jokes and then ending up truly believing the joke because they were actually testing it in the crowd to see if it was a reasonable thing. And I find these absurd things. Just a few days ago, a person was telling me how that the mountains in Kentucky are big. And I was thinking to myself, no, and I insulted him by saying, no, they really aren't very big. Those are old mountains. Those are worn down mountains. The Appalachians are small as compared to the Rockies and the Andes and the Himalayas and other mountain chains. And I insulted him. I could see it. In today's conversations, moment to moment, people are asking, are making comments like being dollar wise or dollar foolish and penny wise was a very common joke when I was a kid. And now that's the common behavior of people. They actually believe that's the right way to be, that money doesn't matter when it really, really does. So we can see that you can change your own beliefs and people can change them for you, and they can be done overtly or they can be done subtly. It's whatever you choose.
Covertly, too.
Covertly, yes, exactly. I think
it's really interesting. I was watching yesterday on Star Talk, which is Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast, and he had an idealist on. His name is Donald Hoffman. And he's trying to like prove idealism through science, and he's come up with all these different, ways of scientifically showing it's good, that consciousness is fundamental, this kind of stuff. Anyways, one of the things that Donald Hoffman brought up was that actually a whole company, I think is called Trace Logistics or something like that. And what they do is all these advertisers and social media outlets and big corporations, because of his views and because of the things that he's shown in his work as a neuroscientist and everything too. They're trying to hire him or have hired him in order to tweak the algorithms and use some of his secrets, what he knows about consciousness and the mind and everything like that, to actually do exactly what you're talking about, Dave, to actually influence the world, and because he's got the secret formula, for it. His work tells you exactly how consciousness works. And so they were like getting him to actually put that stuff into practice. And he was saying, yeah, they pay me big money to do that kind of stuff. So obviously what you're right, you can actually, because I think the human brain is kind of like a computer in a way. You can reprogram it. You can program people to think a certain way, to feel about things a certain way. And it's kind of sad in a way, but it is what it is.
Now,
Another example of that.
Am I imagining this, Scott? Am I imagining it? But wasn't one of the key points that Steve was talking about was you can't, or people either believe or they don't, and it's not really a product of themselves. Was he suggesting that?
I think his question was mainly, what does belief really get you? Like, what does it buy you? Like, even if it wasn't the case that you cannot help what you believe, if you do have control of what you believe and you can change it, what does it get you? What is it?
Right.
What is it doing for you?
And I see that totally. I'm just wondering that first initial question, can we control what we believe? That question is what I'm asking. I think you can control what you believe.
Yeah, like part of his thing was like part of his talk was he talked about doxastic attitudes and discoveries, and he went over like how our choices matter. Like, we choose whether to ask hard questions or not. We choose whether to avoid them, to be honest about them, or whether we keep looking. So we choose a lot of things, so we can choose our beliefs. The idea is, can salvation depend on it? I guess is his main thing.
Yeah, I don't think it should ever depend on that. But we're talking about religion, and anything goes in religion, right? Anything. Right?
Yeah.
You can make up anything and it could be, religious,
Hey, Paul, how you doing, man?
Hi,
the
Scott.
dumb, smart philosopher clown. Hey, the philosopher clown is with us today.
Yeah.
Look at him. What's going on,
Better
man?
that way round. It's better that way round than the Ricky Gervais way around, where he's a clown first and a philosopher second.
Oh yeah. Of course. He is funny though.
He's a clownosifer.
Yeah,
He is a funny guy. Yeah, very funny guy. Very talented, very clever. But I think that every comedian that does long sets like he does, you have to break up your set with something. And he tends to break his up with preaching. He preaches atheism. Yeah. And yes, it's very loosey-goosey on the philosophy. His comedy is tight, but like when he does philosophy, it's like, yeah, maybe you studied some philosophy back in the day, but you sort of like let it go a bit, mate. And he thinks it's like what a lot of people like. They get smart at one thing and they think that makes them like immensely smart on many other things too. And
I mean, my personal opinion on that, Paul, is that at least in my own personal experience, most of the atheists that I engage with are not very sophisticated when it comes to philosophy. Basically, they're they basically operate from personal incredulity. So it's like, well, that just sounds, it can't be true. You mean sky daddies, and and they leave it there. They don't want to go beyond that because that's boring. That's philosophy. Who cares about philosophy? Yet they make all these philosophical pronouncements, and they get on these grandstanding, they get on their soapbox and make these grand philosophical. And it's like the minute you start really just beaming down, that's why I like Steve and Hoyt that we had on today. He's sort of neutral on all that stuff. All he's really interested in is questioning the atheists, like really, but let's dig into what you just said, really. And he kind of says the same thing as me. He's like, the one thing I notice is a lot of people, they like to make their pronouncements at the little face value arguments. And as soon as you try to go a little deeper, then they sort of get uninterested and sort of run away. Yeah. And you're just trying to use a lot of word salad.
Like Dillahunty with any kind of esotericism. Dillahunty goes, no, that's not what I'm here to talk about. They're like, why? Well, because there's a greater political threat, blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, okay, there is that political threat. That does need to be dealt with, but that doesn't mean you can't discuss esoteric ideas with people on a show that's supposed to be dedicated to you talking about these ideas, The most interesting callers I find that call into Matt Dillahunty, he just doesn't want to talk about what they want to talk about. So it's a bit of a problem for me. In fact, I see it as a treasure map. If Matt Dillahunty doesn't want to talk about it, dig there.
Yeah, he will not engage with me on non-dualism or anything like that. Like he's very, he's like, I don't give a shit about that. He's like that. Yeah.
Like, okay. He knows where he's weak, and he only stays in his strong suits.
Yeah, it's controlling the narrative.
Yeah,
that's what he's doing, and he does it very well. He controls the narrative.
And I even told him, I don't even blame you for that attitude because it works for you apparently. And I said, but the thing that gets me is, don't say that my ideas are full of shit. And then when I try to talk to you about it, then you don't give a fuck about it. Like, then why did you even attack it to begin with? Like, why are you even like, I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting to me how people operate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I ever told somebody, your Christianity is bullshit. And then they ask me, well, why? Like such and such said this and this is true. So why would you say that? Oh, fuck that, man. You're full of shit. I don't even want to talk about that. Then why did I even bring it up? It's like, I would never do that. I don't
political agenda at the time.
It is sort of control. It's a control. It's sort of like a psychological thing. I think it's a way to control the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's sort of like a shaming type thing.
And there's a value to that. There's a utility to that. All right. From what he's doing, there's a utility to that. And he's just you call, and he doesn't want to go there because it's going off of his path, like Dark Light said. It's going off his track.
Yeah, and Sophia, hey, what's going on, Sophia? She says, you're not supposed to be able to defend yourself against someone who wants to control the narrative. That's the whole point of controlling persons. Exactly. And Sophia's not going to be able to jump on today because her voice is fucked up, but so I'm speaking for her.
Yeah. I did have a little sideline for you on the original topic, the whole believe or burn thing. So the focus had mostly been on beliefs and whether or not you can control them, whether or not you can influence them, salvation, etc. I essayed on this a while back about believe or burn. So a lot of these things, that phenomenon you find where like something from religion has like been sort of co-opted, it's like been made expedient, turned into like a sort of a marketing concepts, like, you know, when they try and make everything exclusive to one particular faith, or you know, you have to be in part of our club to get this, you know. There's a lot of that, but you find often that if you look deeper, they've taken something actually spiritual but twisted it. So I think with the whole believe or burn thing, what's actually been twisted is something more subtle behind that, which I would call liberate or suffer. Okay, so instead of believe or burn, you know, we talked about the perils of dualism, particularly the self-world distinction and all of this stuff, and how that can be a suffering multiplier. Well, if you think believe or burn, what might be behind that is like liberate or suffer becomes more a sense of like detach from this dualistic notion and embrace the non-dual side, or there will be excess suffering in your life. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think that there's certain, I mean, some amount of suffering may just be guaranteed, but some suffering is egregious. It's unnecessary, and some of it is caused by belief. There are certain beliefs that create more suffering, like identity-based beliefs. You know, I am this, I am that, I am the other. Instead of just stopping at I am, we qualify our own I amness with all of these laundry lists of things. You know, I am my name, I am my star sign, I am my country of birth, I am, you know, my political opinion, my religious opinion, I am my age, I am my occupation. You know, we're obsessed with the verb to be, and it creates a lot of tension and a lot of unnecessary suffering, which we can liberate ourselves from.
Good point.
And so there is if you want to say believe, the believe part means that what you believe is the non-dual teachings, and you use that to escape from the suffering of duality, then believe or burn starts to make a little bit of sense. What it means is something less supernatural and more just, do you want excess suffering in your life based purely on an erroneous belief, or do you want to look deeper to find a more unitive philosophy that doesn't separate you from nature, doesn't separate you from the world, doesn't create this massive list of things that you have to be in order to be yourself, and it just has pure being at its center. Like, is there a route there to escape unnecessary suffering? And I think there is. And so
I know there is.
The kernel of truth behind believe or burn is liberate or suffer, in my opinion.
I mean, I know that's the case for me, because when it didn't happen overnight, but as I engage more with the non-dual practice, because it's not just a belief, it's a practice. But, you know, all practices sort of rest on believing that the practice is going to be useful. You know, why would I engage? Why would I practice something that I didn't believe was going to help me? Right. So what I've found is that I'm more resilient. I have a thicker skin. I don't take things so personal anymore. I have more compassion for people. And the way that I approach the world seems to be the way that the world repays me somehow. Not always, but I mean more so than if I just have this victim mentality. Like if I go through the world feeling like a victim, I mean, look, nature doesn't reward victims. I mean, you can just go to the savannah in Africa and you can see that play out. All the victims never survive. They bleed all over the place. So I don't want to. So it seems like nature doesn't give a fuck about victims. So rather than be a victim, I would rather, you know, engage in my delirium, as Dark Light says, and believe that, you know, that I'm above being a victim, that I can approach the world in a better way. And it seems that that's what nature sort of rewards, you know, depending on your situation. You know, you can't control the external world, but you can control your internal. And
I think the religious way to say what you're saying there, Scott, is that God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah, essentially, because, you know, what's external, what's internal gets projected in my external world, my external reality. So if I'm approaching reality, the external world, in a certain kind of way, then that's what I'm going to get out of it. But if I act like a fucking victim, then it's no wonder that I'm going to see everything in a dark way. Like I've talked about this number of times, family members, that watch like Fox News and they get all fucking mad all the time, all day long. And then they go out in public and they have nothing but problems with people, of different, walks of life. Let's put it that way. And you wonder, why don't I have those problems? They're talking to me like this is just normal. I'm like, I don't have those problems with those people or this situation. And it's because I think it's the way you internally create yourself. If you create yourself as a dumbass, you're going to have dumbass problems, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I can buy that.
That's one way to put it.
See, the big difference is that does your peace come from inside or outside? And that's a huge difference.
Huge, man. Yeah. And it's not to say that we don't stand up for injustice, that we can't try to control the external world. Like, everybody, we're all trying to do thought, and we're all trying to influence thought. We all engage in that in some way or the other. We're trying to influence the thinking of the people out there. Like, that's why I'm doing my show. I have something I want to talk about. Hopefully it resonates with the people it will. And I think there's a good point in that, but I think that I would be more effective in it if I approach it one way over another way. You know what I mean? So I have to maintain, peace of mind, confidence, and not be a victim sort of person, or something like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of what we have in common here is trying to thread the needle between the tension between the atheistic types and the religious types. A lot of us see that tension and we see problems on both sides. And we see a way through. We see a way to separate the wheat from the chaff and to avoid the how should we say, the unfortunacies of organized religion, but without dumping off the babies and jewels in the bathwater. That actually, the deeper spiritual side of it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
See, the big difference in that Eastern versus Western religious idea is really profound, and it's like, is your peace, is your joy, is your happiness dumped upon you from a belief system, or does it come from within you? And that's everything. I think it comes from within you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The kingdom of heaven, my friend, it is within you. And I think it's beliefs that can obscure it. It's beliefs that can disconnect you from that inner peace, from that natural birthright that you have as a human being. For ages we thought that our closest ancestor biologically, our closest cousin was the chimpanzee. But in actual fact, there's another species that's even closer than that, which is the bonobo. And they are much more peaceful than chimps. They're much more peaceful. And so we're closer to that than we are to the aggressive chimpanzee type. But we're not quite as skilled as the bonobo. We're somewhere sort of in between the two. And yeah, we do get a lot of problems, and certain societal and institutional things do tend to exacerbate that, because it becomes expedient for organizations to have things in place like you must believe this or you will perish. Whereas something a lot subtler, a lot more encouraging, a lot more invitational. Like, if you don't want excess suffering in your life, maybe look into duality and whether or not you're actually on a solid ground with it. Because if you're not, if it's actually not only is it harming you, but it's and harming the world, but it's actually ungrounded and even false, then why suffer over something that's just a delusion ultimately?
Yeah.
Why do all the suffering? Yourself and the world and everything. Don't we want to reduce the amount of suffering?
Yeah, there's what makes a person have peace of mind or happiness, joy, all of those things? Is it other people? It shouldn't be. It should be from within. And that's how I feel. I end all of my content I make with a statement: be happy. It's not, what I'm trying to say is people are responsible for their own happiness. It's not, oh, something bad happened, now I have to be miserable. Or, oh, something bad happened, so, now I'm going to take it out on everybody else. That's all negative, right? I mean, so I'm trying to say you can be happy. That is a possible thing, regardless of what's going on in your life. I think,
Yeah.
So that's why I do that. It's trying to say your happiness has to come from within, not because of somebody else. I could love somebody and really, have a great relationship with them, but they're not responsible for my own happiness. I don't think so.
That's right. That's right. I believe that.
The best we could have is a partnership and a relationship where we can build each other up and help each other in various ways. But I can't be responsible for my partner's joy. I don't think so. And she can't be responsible for my joy and my peace. I have to have my own peace. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Dave asked, why not both inside and outside is the side effect of self-value in happiness? I would say that the inside is the outside ultimately. That's just a concept that we're manufacturing, that the outside has to, it's either or, this either or sort of dichotomy is where these control issues come from. It's like, well, there's this outside I have to control. It's like, well, maybe you can just control your inside and then the outside will follow a little better.
Yeah. Or at least influence it. You say control it, influence it. Whether your internal state can be controlled or whether it can be influenced is not necessarily the same question. You certainly can alter your perspective from a more personal to a more global center. And by doing that, you can sort of see your life as like a story that's not so intoxicating, not so like Uncle Kastrup. He talks of the Uncle Bernardo. He talks of the blossom thing, the Buddhist tale of the blossom. It's like if the blossom thinks that it's all about the blossom, then it's never going to fall. But if it's more that we are that, we are like that, and that we are a part of nature. I'm sorry. Something just happened there inside my head, and I just completely dissociated from the point I was trying to make. My apologies.
Sophia asked, so the West oppressing other countries on the outside is the result of the inside of those countries. In a way, it's almost like if we live in a country that's full of fucked up people that want to control people, that's probably what they're going to do. I guess that's what you're talking about. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's what she's getting at, and I think that's true.
Yeah, it's true. Of course. And that plays into the point. Like if we as a country, now this will get into politics and all that, the body politic, but it's still true though. Like, and again, it's like where the grassroots has a value. Like, I think if our country was more non-dual, we'd probably be a lot more compassionate, not just with each other, but that training would have us be more compassionate to the other, the so-called other. Because we wouldn't look at them that way. It would be a total different paradigm shift.
Speaking of you as a country, Scott, happy birthday, you guys.
That's right.
That's
Happy
right.
birthday.
Happy birthday. And hello. Yeah. Is it Yazin? Is that the name? Yazin? How are you doing? You are muted, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, hello. The air is dead. Hello.
He's muted. And then we have Joel on stage. What's going on, Joel?
Oh.
Everybody's quiet on us today.
Are you still there, Lou?
Hello, Yazin. You're not muted now. How are you doing?
Is this thing on? Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
What about Joel? Is Joel on?
Joel is muted.
Huh.
Yazin fell off. Yeah, people are having problemos. And then Dave popped back.
Ad break, Scott. You should do an ad read at the moment.
And then
Don't worry if you're not back.
Let's see if this will work. Yazin, how are you doing?
Oh.
Hello, Dave, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
And I think it's working right. I tend to want to change the conjunction and look at spectra rather than poles, places on a spectrum. Would that be a useful change in the conversation?
Always. I like a bit of analog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's basically my most important point, is that these things are usually a little bit of everything. There's always a pinch of one thing. There's always a pinch of another. There are mixtures. These are complex things in our society. So we should always, I would not say always. I don't want to use the word, I'm doing it myself. I shouldn't use the word always. I would strive to use the word and point out the ends of the spectrum rather than or. That is the key point I'm trying to bring up.
Yeah, that's non-dualism in a nutshell.
It's also dualism in a nutshell. It's both. Yeah.
Well, that's I guess. I mean, that's always my issue with you, is the language is always, the way you use words is just totally different the way I understand them. I always think of dualism as not one thing, but two things. And non-dualism is just the one. Because dual means two, right?
Yeah, I agree. Dualism means two.
That's dichotomy. Dichotomy means two things. So if you engage in dualistic thinking, you're engaged in dichotomous thinking. It's this and that.
I hear you. My perspective is changed, and it is based on a new perspective. I used to have the same perspective you had. And that's actually the proof of the original discussion here, that I've changed my beliefs. And in my beliefs, dualism is when you show both ends of the spectrum, and you put an and between them, as opposed to showing both ends of the spectrum and putting an or between them. Because the or tends to leave one or the other out ultimately, and the and tends to keep both in the discussion ultimately. And the seed that emerges is more important than the seed that's initially what emerges from the seed is more important than the seed itself. Okay, I mean, yeah, for operational purposes, yes, a seed is very important. Can't get around not having a seed, but I like using the spectra rather than the ends of the spectra, and I rather use the non-dualism that comes out of my dualistic perspective and the monism that comes out of my dualistic perspective. Now, is the language a problem? You betcha. And are you saying the same thing I'm saying? We have ended up in the same place so many oftentimes.
We're saying this. That's why
Yeah.
it gets confusing, because we're saying the same exact thing. We're using different words to mean the same thing. And I understand that words are not, there is no intrinsic meaning in words. I do agree with you there. But words have usages. And so if we seek to communicate, we try to use words that most people understand in order for it to be effective. Because if we're going to go off into some esoteric use of a word, it may defeat the whole purpose of using words, right?
Yeah, but then on the other hand, some words may be actually designed to cause confusion and need to be redefined in order to bring out a valuable truth. Yeah,
Right.
to say that the word's definitions are correct in itself is a problem.
It's like I could say, I believe in God. And then someone, oh, okay, which God? None of them. Well, what do you mean none of them? Do you even believe in a creator? I don't believe in a creator. I don't believe in anything like a creator. And then they'll say, well, what do you mean by God? I mean no God. That's what I mean by God, that there's no God. That's confusing to people. You see what I'm saying? People will be like, well, why are you even then what use is the word God? Well, because I think we should try to correct the confusion. It's like, but are you really correcting the confusion, or are you just adding to the confusion? That's the question.
Oh, I agree with you.
Yeah,
And
my take on this, guys. Can I just pop in just very
right
quick?
in, please.
My take on this is I find, Dave, your kind of idiosyncratic use of dualism very interesting, but I also find it slightly problematical in these conversations because it sort of sets up that we're going to be engaging in like equivocation fallacy, so that we're talking about different things. When, like, for example, I mean, do you accept that, for example, when Scott and I talk about duality, that we're not talking about the same thing that you are?
yes, I do accept that. I do see the problem.
Yeah. So in these sort of ontological discussions that we have, and like the psychological discussions that are based on the ontology, we mean a certain thing when we're talking about a dualistic approach. It's usually down to the world I distinction.
Okay.
And it also can be the mind matter duality that a lot of folks used to subscribe to, and you get a few nowadays, but not so many. Mostly now it's physicalism and idealism, a few neutral monists knocking about, but as far as ontology goes, you don't get many dualists. Now, what you're talking about with your duality is very, very interesting, and I'd like to spend like a whole show on it, maybe one day. In fact, I think you already did, but I'd still like to do it again. It's just that for the purposes of these conversations, when Scott says dualism, because he means something different, we're then getting into a tug of war over the word, and that can be like a problem.
Yeah, that can be, and I agree with you. That's an issue. So the question is, where do I find a truth that actually pins down one or the other in terms of the usage of these words, and when is the usage of the words overlapping? Um, because I try to stick with what I see as a datum, since I'm trying to stick with that notion, and I'm trying to stick in a thermodynamic sense, since my primary interest is morality rather than belief. I am going to sway myself, and hopefully others, to use the words in the way I think they should be used, but I also want to be able to change the way I think, because I'm not always right. I'm often wrong. So that's where the problem lies. I mean, yeah, I agree. That's a big issue. Yeah, dualism to me always means two, and in theology, it always means a spectrum to me. Yeah, I guess that's kind of true.
Right. So, in a way, what you're implying there is that to be non-dual is kind of like creeps into sort of black and white thinking, digital thinking, rather than spectral analog thinking.
Exactly.
And I don't really think that's the case, actually, because within non-duality, you can still have polarities. Okay, you can still have your hot, cold, your dark, light, and all of the stuff going on within a single ontological substance. And
yes,
also,
like the universe itself. The universe itself is a single thing, right? The beginning of time, the end of time, those are single things. So monism makes sense absolutely there. I mean, it's got to be.
Yeah, singularity. Yeah, ultimately, people talk about singularity in terms of origins, but if you bring the B theory of time and relativity into that, then ultimately you are just talking about one thing. Even if you are a physicalist, you can still be non-dual about it and say that the universe is a singularity, is a oneness. You know, and that also dissolves the self-world distinction, because like the universe doesn't stop at your skin, so the oneness is still what you are as well. You don't have to necessarily go to the idealism point to get the spirituality of non-duality.
Yes, I agree. So one thing I do to resolve that issue is I look at the physical history of how we evolved, and I see that there's two major strategies in behavior and one major variable. The two major strategies are tournament, which means winners and losers, or family, and then the major variable is deception or camouflage. And that's what we evolved with more than anything else. And so I will pin things back to how to support the family rather than um, things that tend to move toward a tournament condition, a winner or loser situation.
That sounds very similar to an analysis I did on the discourse within the forums, where you've basically got two different approaches: the combat version and the cooperation version. And in cooperation, you still do have competitive elements, but they're contained within a broader sense that we're here to cooperate and to cooperatively truth seek. You know, and then if it's within a wider cooperative frame, then things like charitability tend to happen. You get a lot of good faith, you get really good discussions. But if it's all just combat, then this is similar to what you're saying about the tournament approach, you know, and people that go onto the forums and they're just there to score points off of folks, and you know, mostly it's cheap stuff and jibes and, you know, my group good, your group bad, blah blah blah, and it's, you know, it's a different type of fun. To me, it's a bit boring, but to a lot of people, it's just what those kind of groups are for. And you know, I try to be less judgmental about it, but you know, I think that there's a better use for them. If we enter a more a co-inquiry frame, you know, where we are actually valuing each other as mutual seekers, and in a mutually respectful way, that we can learn from, as well as teach one another, and just kind of get somewhere good with the conversation, you know, because it's easy to get somewhere bad with it. It's easy to just go round and round in circles, slinging insults and making all of this stuff about, oh, you know, these people who believe this are just like awful, and everybody who believes what I believe are just so much better, and blah, 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 blah. You know, it all just like a sports team mentality thing, you know? That's what happens when you're in the combat zone. And we mentioned it a month back with that thing about identity, where it's like identity protective cognition and all of that stuff. That's sports team stuff. It's like literally, if you say something bad about, you know, my political opinion or my religious opinion or my whatever, it's like it's a personal attack on me because it's part of my identity, and that's highly problematical. You know, we talk about the problems of like using words slightly differently, but it's much more problematical to have an approach where an idea is a part of who we are, and so to attack that is to attack us. That puts everything on the line. We go into these forums then, and we're ready for combat. As soon as anybody says anything about an idea that's potentially got a weakness, then it's self-protection kicks in, and then all bets are off. All bets are off. You don't have to be charitable anymore. You don't have to be in good faith. You don't have to avoid fallacies and straw man and poisoning the well and all of this stuff that makes good conversation, how should we say, it's but not necessarily good. You know, you don't have to avoid any of that anymore, because there's something more pressing at stake. It's your survival, in actual fact. Because the status within a group, evolutionarily speaking, was critical. You know, you had to have a certain standing within the tribe in order to have nutrition and to have mates and to have support, and to, you know, as a social species, you need that place in the hierarchy. And we've still got all of the anxieties from those ways of being. That they call them like evolutionary hangovers and such. But like, to admit that you're wrong in a forum or something to so many people, even though it's a positive thing because it's learning and it's, you know, what we really should be using the stuff for, it creates a sense of like, oh, you know, no, there's something more at stake. That my very survival is on the line, and so it doesn't matter what fallacies I need to invoke or what names I need to call people. It's justified. It's all justified. Any kind of behavior.
And then, Dave, are you familiar with the term semantic explosion?
No, that's new to me. What semantic explosion? What is it?
Yeah, so that refers to a situation where the meaning of a word expands so broadly that it loses all explanatory value or becomes trivial. You know, like it just gets so far that it doesn't really mean anything. Like it can just mean anything you want it. Like, you know, like we could say non-dualism is actually dualism in different ways, you know, and then it becomes really hard to nail down, well, then what do you mean by non-dualism versus dualism if they kind of like bottom out into the same thing? It just makes everything so incredibly hard. Yazin, can you hear me? Still go ahead, Dave.
Well, I agree with you, and you're right. Semantic explosion is a problem. In fact, semantic explosion is exactly what we have with the concept of God or belief. These are those things that have been manipulated through the years in almost every civilization. So, yeah, that is an issue. So, where do I come from? I come from an engineering perspective, and I see what I see there. So, the most fundamental thing that I see in philosophy is the lack of use of mathematics, because mathematics is the purest form of logic that there's around. The idea, though, that math is more than a language in itself seems to be problematic. I don't have a problem with asking what if. I have a problem when saying that's what has to be. Mm-hmm. Okay, except that the three basic laws I see in nature that apply to us: thermodynamics, chaos, and system integrity. That seems to be the three laws that really seem to make the difference. Other than that, everything else is up for grabs, pretty much. Yeah, so dualism means to me mathematics, and the mathematics has got to be paid, has to have some attention paid to it. For example, A plus B is equal to C if A and B are not zero. If that's true, can I label A and B as different things, and then can I name C? And I use that equation all the time. I don't look for oneness. I look for the three items in that little equation. So I can say.
Sorry, can I ask you to go back a step to those three things? You said it was thermodynamics, chaos, and
System integrity. Yeah, system integrity.
Did you forget death and taxes?
But death is part of system integrity. That's the losing system, isn't it?
What about taxes? Is that thermodynamics?
Well, yeah, taxes, money is energy, and money can be shown.
Okay, brilliant.
And money can be shown to be a form. There's a word, cement. Cement is an acronym for all the forms of energy that have been commonly used in engineering and in scientific exploration: chemical, electrical, mechanical, electromagnetic, nuclear, and thermal. I want to add morality, munitions, and money to the M's.
But I think.
What about dark energy? Doesn't that count?
Dark energy is part of energy, and it's partial. It's currently unknown entirely of what it is. It isn't clear that dark energy uses thermodynamics. It's not clear, but it's clear that it does in fact do gravity very, very well. Dark energy expands the universe. We know that. Those are two different ideas that we don't quite have a complete handle on. Nonetheless, what's important to us now is not the size of the universe or the size of the galaxy or how the galaxy spins, which determines dark matter, is the proof of dark matter and lensing effects. What's important is how we behave to each other, isn't it? How we treat each other.
Is it for real? Yeah.
Can I go back on something though that you said regarding the language and the way that you're approaching concepts and ideas and things like that? Because I think if I get this right, you're just basically saying that you approach it from an engineering perspective, right?
Yes.
So we know that mathematics is binary, right? And basically that's what you're saying, that, when you break things down, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's binary. And so you're sort of approaching these things from a very binary sort of logic, right?
I'd have to agree with that. Yeah.
Well, my worry with that is that you might run the risk of not really approaching things in a realistic way, though. Because in reality, the way reality works, the way I understand it, is it's very rarely binary. It's very fuzzy. So some things can be partly true. You can have like multi-valued logic, like indeterminate or more values. You've got intuitionistic logics, which like a statement isn't simply true or false.
Well, then wait a second. Then I disagree now with binary. Mathematics, engineering is not binary then. Engineering has binary in it. There's at least two variables. But engineering can use any mathematical system that's out there and any logical system that's out there in order to optimize and use energies.
Well, that's why I'm asking, like, are you saying that you are looking at like things in a more digital computational way, like Paul had mentioned? And I think you said you did. And I start thinking about like Boolean algebra, like it's 0 or 1. But,
we use Boolean algebra, sure, but that's only one form of algebra. We also use regular algebra.
That's what I'm getting at. Like most mathematics, like the way I understand it, is that it's very continuous. It's not binary. I mean, it kind of is depending on how you frame it, but like large parts of mathematics are not really binary like that. Like This is continuous change. Geometry is like continuous space. Topology.
Yeah, but you have to draw multiple lines to do geometry. To do calculus, you have to have a function, and that function has terms in it, and you take the derivative or the integral of it. In linear algebra, you use multiple equations, send them into a grid, and try to manipulate them individually with the step epsilon approach. In no case can you reduce it to one thing. It is a process. The name may be one thing, but the process itself is multi-parted.
Right, and I would agree. Like I think that's more towards something like a gradient.
Yeah, but in our society, we think one thing is where we're going.
Right.
But in engineering, we're trying to break it apart so that we can see what it is.
Yeah,
we start with breaking it apart.
And that's fine. And I don't think anything about non-dualism says you can't do that.
No, it doesn't. I agree.
Right. So that's where the confusion comes in. So when we start talking about these concepts, it gets very hard to follow. Very hard to follow because you're trying to say the same exact thing I am, but using a different term.
Yes, and the reason I'm doing that is because I don't see A plus B equals C clearly in Western thought. I see it all reducing down to one thing, and then once that one thing becomes a central thought, then I see or being used a lot. What I observe, that's what I observe in everybody. But
I think that's because they don't do that. I think that people are these either or people because they are dualistic. They are binary in their thinking. They're very dichotomous. It's like they're very black and white thinkers out here. And it's not because of non-dualism, it's because of dualism. I think most people don't really appreciate non-dualism in their everyday practice of life because if they did, there wouldn't be so much division.
Isn't it really, though, monistic thought from monistic philosophies? Isn't it true that that way of thinking comes out of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity? That's where it comes from more than any other place. The Tao does not show that. Buddhism does not show that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but so you got to change terms to make it fit. Okay,
yeah, and are dualistic religions. Those are dualistic.
Those are dualistic, and they work with lots of people, and they have worked very peacefully for lots of years, as compared to the West.
Are you sure that it worked peacefully?
As compared to the West, yes. As compared to the West, not absolutely. There are wars all over the planet, but the frequency of wars in China, in Southeast Asia, in Japan, and I know Japan had a lot of wars. In India, is far less than here.
You're misunderstanding me. I'm saying, don't you see that the religions of the West are more divisive because of their dualism, and they're dualistic?
Regardless of dualistic or not, regardless of that word, they are divisive. They're divisive. What makes them, and the word that most associated with the West is monism.
No, I don't see that. The monotheism is not monism. We went over this, and I thought you understood that.
Monotheism, how is monotheism not a monism? And yes, I know you can explain something different, but in Western behavior for the last 2,000 years, it's always been monism versus monism. I mean, if you take a look at the wars from Rome till now, it's almost continuous warfare. Almost continuous warfare.
Does not mean monism.
What do I mean?
You're conflating. Just like you and Joel had a conversation a few weeks ago on that.
Yeah.
And you appreciated the correction. And now it's like totally you're back to it again. It's like that's what I was talking about to you before, is that it seems like we get these concepts cleared up, and then it's always we go back to the same problem. So I'm just not, it's really hard. It's just a hard thing to talk about. Monotheism is, mono means one, but theism means God. So it's just talking about one God. But monism is not regarding theism. Monism is just oneness. But anyways, what do you think, Brooklyn? Does any of this make sense?
That's some wild discussion going on here. I mean, woo!
It's so hard, dude. I'm telling you, this is why people don't like philosophy, man. It gets very
I had one thought. We talk about tribalism, right? I mean, quite a while back in the discussion, they were talking about tribalism. And human beings, we are tribal, right? We form these groups and we live within certain groups, and outsiders are considered dangerous, right? So that's always been the case, it seems, right? And that in and of itself is a type of dualism, isn't it?
Yep.
So if human beings tend to be dualistic, right, isn't that part of our survival? I mean, can't we see that as well? We kind of have to be dualistic to survive. Right. Now that's not even talking about right and wrong or anything. It's just saying that maybe there's a functionality to dualism.
Oh yeah. That is why I always say this is why non-dualism, when you dig deep, it can become sort of hard. It gets confusing a little bit, because we are all, like, I am a dualist in practice as well, because if I wasn't, then I'd be bumping into objects all day long. Like, I have to take it very seriously that, I'm separate. This separateness seems to be something I should take very serious.
And it might protect you.
Yes, it's the way you defend yourself and protect. And that's why, dualism is very, and things like non-dualism is not very intuitive. And this is where the problem plays out, obviously, you know what I'm saying? It gets very confusing. And a lot of people want to conflate, usefulness with, maybe ontologies or stuff like that, but most people, as I think Paul had mentioned, most people in modern society like to identify mainly with a non-dual monism. Even materialists, everybody. Most people want to say, it's very few people that would identify with dual. Well, I don't know. There's people that believe in dual. I can't really say that, but there is an attraction to non-dualism because it coheres with so much that we've learned over the centuries, not just regarding philosophy and stuff like that, but also with science and things like that.
Now, can we say
we're connected,
Can we say, or you say, as someone who's non-dualistic, that as a species, we're heading more towards that and evolving more towards non-dualism over time? And maybe there'll be a time in the future where people will be more non-dualistic as they are now, because now it seems, at least in America, in the West, at least, it seems very dualistic.
Yeah. I don't know how. I think that a lot of what's going to affect society comes from beliefs, like what we believe. So you're going to have to really address the belief systems of the people within a given society or culture. How do you do that? Well, I guess in the West, we put a big emphasis on science, and we put a lot of emphasis, though, also on religion. So those are two areas where I think you can sort of address within those contexts. Perhaps that might be a way to move forward in that. But it's just such a strong, like you said, tribalism is so strong, and it's very satisfying to have enemies and have friends. You can see your enemy burn in hell, for all you care. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of emotional, cathartic satisfaction that comes from making your enemies pay. Like, I want to see the liberals cry, or I want to see the conservative tears, or whatever.
Yeah, and it's
all with that.
It's very, very American, the whole team thing. I mean, even the 4th of July, right? It's pride. I'm an American. I'm on that team. I'm from that country. This is all separating, right? It's all separated. And people love to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to do it. I don't really do that much anymore. I've changed. But in the past, I was all for, I'm in with this team. It's like, I'm on that team. I'm part of this group.
Oh, yeah.
But I've changed over time. I'm no longer kind of like that,
Right.
Now I feel comfortable being alone. And but that's frowned upon in our country, in our culture. Like the loner.
On the other hand, you see a lot of I see a lot of, at least like with the progressive side of things, I see a lot of people trying to break down those walls. Like, tribalism really depends on that boundary you're talking about, like the me versus you, in group versus out group, right versus wrong, people over there,
Yeah.
that layer of separation. But I also see a lot of movements where they try to be more inclusive. There's a big push in society to include people who used to be like, what was it? May was Pride Month.
Yeah.
So, we're trying to include, they're getting 30 whole days to include people who were the out group. So there's a whole movement of trying to make the out group the in group.
So isn't that us evolving more towards a non-dualistic approach over time?
Yeah, it's like kind of like in fits and starts, because though at the same time, even within those groups, don't agree into the out group. It's a very weird thing, but I think you're right though. I think it seems like we're evolving more towards inclusiveness rather than exclusions. At the end of the day, it's just maybe in fits and starts, maybe.
Oh yeah, if nothing happens, and it does. If evolution happens like that, it doesn't happen in one swift, thing. It's gradual, and I think that. But I do think we're gradually, as a species, moving away from the dualistic type approach. Gradually.
Is to sort of step away from the identity, like engaging in the identity politics, shift from identity-based perception to more of a field-based perception. Like try to say, these people are in this group, they're different, have to be treated different according to the group they fall into. And that seems to be a step towards the inclusion. It's actually also, ironically, a way to keep people into their groups. Like there has to be a point to where, okay, it's probably a necessary step to do that, But at the end of the day, we want to go back to the Martin Luther King vision that, people should be judged on the content of their character, not the color of their skin or their gender or anything like that. Like, that's really the point, is we're trying to get to that vision. But to get there, sometimes we have to recognize the group dynamic and start paying special attention to those groups in order to help them feel included. But we don't want to keep it there. We have to progress past that, even to where that's not even, because the whole thing is we're trying to destroy the boundary, right? We're trying to knock it all down.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. But see the problem that happened? It's like,
no, it's like the whole like racism and race, right?
Yeah.
People come, like, there's safety in the grouping of races, in the segregation. We use words. There's actually some safety there, but it's not our best, right? So, like, if I come from another country and I don't speak English, it's probably safer for me to integrate into a part of the country or state where people speak like I do, where they look like I do, where they eat like I do and have the same traditions I do. That's probably the safest way for me to get along. But that's not good ultimately, because that's divisive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's dividing. But it's really a very strange dichotomy. It's like there's safety there, but it's really not the best.
I know. I was even watching something not long ago. Even when it comes to animal rights, we've come a long way to kind of see other animals as part of us in a way, because of their ability to experience pain and experience suffering. And so there's there's always been a movement towards that, but it seems to be, have made a lot of progress. Like, there are laws, like you can't abuse animals and stuff like that, of course. And it's funny how that inclusiveness is even starting to register on when it comes to, like we were talking about earlier, like even the artificial intelligence, the LLMs. I was reading something that now they're measuring that for some reason researchers feel like LLMs are suffering, and now we need goddamn laws, because LLMs are now essentially slaves, and so we have to treat them as a group that deserves rights and stuff. And it's like, all of that kind of tells me that we're trying to move towards a non-dualistic way of approaching life, but I don't know. It's really strange, because I think a lot of people give AI more benefit than animals, and even like trans people, like, some people like are hesitant to, like Richard Dawkins, for example, like he's against, a sign, calling someone who identifies as a male, he's like, I'll say it out of politeness to their face, but deeply, I'm not going to really name them a man or a woman. I go by their biological sex. Right.
Right. I've heard. I know people like that for sure.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, he's real fast to call his chatbot Claudia a woman. He says she's a woman. She identifies as I call her a woman. But a computer has no sex. Right. So where's the consistency there?
It's imaginary.
It's religious thinking.
I know my girlfriend is working a lot with an AI to try to develop a business, and she always calls it him. So,
Yeah.
but obviously it's not male or female.
Dawkins, the greatest of all time.
I mean, that's the whole God thing, right? God is usually referred to as him. You know.
Yeah. And Nell says a non-dual outlook seems like it would naturally lead to a vegan lifestyle. How often have you thought about becoming one, and what has kept you from making that leap? I know that's a really good question, because that's something I've thought about, supporting, the killing and eating of animals. Actually, if we're being logical and we're being consistent with a non-dualism, you would be a vegan, just like a lot of non-dual people of those sort of traditions are vegans. They don't eat meat and stuff like that. And so I think the thing that gets me is just the fact that it tastes good, the fact that, it's like, no, I understand it's inconsistent, but it is part of that problem, that inconsistency. But at least I acknowledge that, it's kind of like, I think Alex O'Connor is also a vegan too, for those same reasons. And he says as much as well. I'm just, and people who continue to eat meat despite it, the only thing I can think is it's all because of your desire. You're driven by your desire to eat. You're letting that override your understanding. And it's something that, kind of reflects on how serious you take your non-dualism. Absolutely.
And also your culture, your upbringing, all those things play a role.
Mm-hmm.
If you're brought up eating meat, it's like part of your culture, so you have to go against your culture if you're going to become vegan.
Yeah. And like Exit Music makes a good point here. Human race would have died out without eating meats. There are places in the world where extreme protein shortages, mountain lions are spiritual and will eat you. Yeah, there's a good case. You could make a case where, say like the self, if the self is something that doesn't exist, or you can make some sort of, idea that nature is all about a food chain, and we're part of that food chain. So it naturally follows that we would be doing the things as any other animal would, eating meat. And even with veganism, I don't know how true this is, but even there are some people that have compassion for vegetables, for grass. They're sentient beings. So what are you going to do? Just starve to death? Like, where do you draw the line? But you can make the case, like X Music was saying, you're, as a total system, we all feed on each other. That's just the nature of reality. We all feed on each other in one way or the other. I think it's just this association with the self that gives it a moral prerogative, because we think that the self, we take it too serious, but the self is not outside of nature. In fact, the self is nature. Ultimately, you could make that argument that you're just an expression of nature. So when you go and you eat meat and eat other things, maybe you're just expressing nature as part of it, and you're still maintaining a non-dual philosophy. That's one way to look at it. Yeah, like X Music says, just respect what you eat. Native Americans gave thanks to the animals they ate. Right. That's a good point. Yeah, so those are the kind of things you can ponder on that. Yeah. But do you have any more thoughts? I'm going to get ready to get out of here soon. So I got a few things I got to take care of on this 4th of July. In fact, what are you doing for the 4th tonight, Lou?
At 7:30, my girlfriend comes home from work, and there's a 4th of July party across the street. So I'll probably go over there for a little while, probably eat something. It's like a block party, like a neighborhood block party. So I'm waiting, and then we'll probably do that. But I'm not really a big patriotic person. But
yeah.
But
Yeah, you'll get all teary-eyed over symbols.
no, not my way, really. I mean, I'm happy to live in America. I'm glad, I'm grateful, but it's not for the current government,
Yeah. Yeah, people say you got to be proud to be an American. Well, part of being an American, I think, is engaging in the system, like trying to make changes where it's due, like call it out when there's bad things going on, and do your part as an American to change the things you're not proud of.
Yeah,
like
and I don't believe in the type of American idea like American exceptionalism, like America must always be better than everybody else. That's like definitely not my thing,
That's definitely dualism.
Yes, I'm from America, and America's the only way. That's no. Now you're gonna come against America, you got another thing coming.
That's right. I'm an American. I'm proud to be an American.
Anyway, I'm gonna go because I'm missing my fights. I bet on some weird fights today. The something I never did, and maybe some of them are over. Cage warriors, like the
Oh, okay.
small time fighters. But I made some bets, so I got to see how I'm doing.
Oh yeah, you got to check out how that turns out. That's right. Yeah, man. I might see if I can go watch some of the fights somewhere. Maybe I've got some friends that they have parties every time they have those competitions and stuff.
Well, there's not much on today. There's real minor league fights on today, not the big stuff.
Oh, yep. All right. Well, I'm going to get out of here too and take care of some things. But I appreciate it for everybody tuning in. I think it was a really fun show today. Stephen was great. I liked his thoughts and everything like that. If you're new to the show, please do me a favor, like and subscribe, help me out, join the community. And yeah, man, let's do it. And until next week, we will do it again.
All right, have a good one.
All right, brother. You too. Y'all be good.